Thank you, EC Council, for having me. Yes, let me introduce myself shortly, and then moving on onto the topic that we have today to talk. So, operation technology, OT, under attack, leveraging AI for proactive defense. So yes, hi, I'm Atdhe. So I've been working within a field for the last more than 11 years within cybersecurity and utilizing technology in all of my fields and my work that I was doing previously. So I recently got certified as a CISO within an EC Council course and program that they provide. And then I have also other certification that holds me on cybersecurity and the technology overall. So let's jumping into the topic. So let's start from the beginning. So this presentation, my talk would have two different parts. First part would be focused mostly on the security matters, cybersecurity matters when it comes to the operation technology, OT. And then the second part would be sharing my research work within this field, especially related to the operation technology, IoT, industrial IoTs, wireless sensor networks, and so on. So let's start. Why OT security matters? So it matters, and today we see that the increased degree of attacks that targeting mostly critical infrastructure, which would be very impactful whenever those would be targeted and got hit by different attacks. Even those smallest ones that we would not be counting so much, would disrupt those normal operation of those OT's infrastructures. And we know that those are very susceptible when it comes to the risk and threats and potential attacks. And we have all over the place those power grids, water plants, facilities, manufacturing, all those are connected and utilized at some degree, some level of automation and digitalization when it comes to their processes. Sometimes they use those very old OT infrastructures or those recent one, industrial IoTs or just IoTs for their process automation and digitalization. So that's a part of industry revolution, and we are seeing that come to a very high increase. And cyber attacks all the time are shifting towards more of those critical infrastructure when it comes to the operation technology. And whenever we feel and we have that disruption within those IoT and OT infrastructure, that would impact us, all of us, worldwide, globally. So the impact is globally. It's not just some organizations' attack surface that would be mapped out and target an attack, but that would have a major impact worldwide. So, and at the end of the day, that would not be just we would lose some data, but would be a lot of malicious crafted payloads and attacks that could bring us into those very dark states of infrastructures where we will not be able to come back in our feet again. So in IoT, in OT environments and IoT, cyber attacks will not just crash part of infrastructure, for example, specific endpoints and servers, but that would impact stopping the whole process and would impact the whole society of that country or that area, geographical area. That could be a region that is serving with some services from that facility, that critical infrastructure. Let's move on. So cyber physical joint point convergence. So where those two things would have that joint point. So IT and OT, and we know that for IT that will be more focused and data centric, and OT would be more on the process. So their convergence points looking from cybersecurity would be expanded attack surface. So the attack surface, it's the place that those two share together, and that would be the joint point where we would need to tackle this risk and potential threat and attack in the future. So that would be the mindset that we want to have. So we want to focus towards that attack surface, because that would be the place where those two different sides, data and process, would be joining and providing and offering some services to the citizen, customers, clients, whoever we are trying to give that service. Seeing things from a real world happening, so we have some experience. Here you're seeing three major examples over the last 5 to 10 years that we got some experience when it comes to the physical consequences. So shutdowns, disruptions, from a well-known Stuxnet towards ransomwares on Colonial Pipeline that has happened, on disruption on the fuel infrastructure within a very huge major part of the east coast of the US, and then Ukraine power grid that was happening back in time. All those blackout scenarios, all those were OT that were targeted and threatened and attacked. And this was just expanding towards more geopolitical cyber battlefield. So it's not just among hackers, among defense and offense. So this field has been expanded and involved a lot of political and geographical aspects into the playground. So impact of OT attacks we are feeling, so especially on that fuel infrastructure, on that case, major cities on the huge part of the East Coast, people couldn't get some fuel, some gas for their vehicles and whatever they needed, generators or else, and trucks and things like that. So that would be the impact that we already felt that, and that was coming from a ransomware. There was a group that targeted this infrastructure of this company, and they demanded a ransom to be paid, and until that not paid, they're not going to release that operation, that disruption, and that infrastructure from that disruption that they made it. So operational downtime would be there, that would be the impact, and then a lot of financial and safety and public image and national security concern too, because you see that the degree of this impact is huge. Solve the problem. So where are those problems? So OT was never designed with cybersecurity in mind. So that wasn't an idea on the beginning. But now with the recent, at least in the last 10 years, especially after COVID, we are seeing that needs to be adjusted and take some measure and control and put some control around those infrastructure, and let's see what we can do. So attackers evolve faster. They are enhancing their techniques and methods that they are using. So those attackers would evolve faster than signatures. So we used to use signature, and that signature-based security, driven security, we are seeing that is failing. So legacy OT systems, since they were not designed for cybersecurity, we have then a very limited, restricted visibility when it comes to those very old ICS and SCADA environments. And the same way as we use and we try all those emerged technology like AI and machine learning for a protective and defense, the same way attackers they are using. You saw a lot of attacks that they were happening in the recent days and weeks. So that was on the Canvas, and last year was on a Cloudflare. They have a major incidents that happen coming potentially from the use of AI and all those agentic AI infrastructures that you can set up and establish and maliciously inject the payload and then target whatever you want to target. since we know the problem, and has been quite long time that we know the problem, but when it comes to the doing thing, we somehow lack at that point. I'm talking this generally. I'm not just pointing towards one or the other side and one or the other level of hierarchy within an organization, from decision makers towards the technical, but in general. So we will need to see, since we know the problem, as the root cause analysis teaches us, we would be trying to find that root cause, and somehow we are around that and close to that. And now let's put up some solutions and list some alternatives and options that we have. So reactive defense to proactive intelligence. This would be my approach that I would be sticking around and trying to mitigate that this way. What that would mean. So we are not just gonna wait and see what's happening, and then whenever that would happen, we would react. We would stand up and we would say, okay, this is happening, let's see what we can do. That would be too late. We want to have a more proactive approach, and combining that with a proactive intelligence, that would be the next state of evolving for IoT systems that we wanted to defend. So how do we defend those OT systems? Evolving. So the need for more predictive security, more forecasting on what could happen, as a comparison analysis among baselines, and having different versions of the baselines for our infrastructure would be very helpful for us, maintaining that baseline registry. Anomaly detection, so we want to pick up all those data that we have, logs and everything, and use those in a proactive intelligence way, where we would be having more machine learning driven solutions that would consider the exact data that would be fed into those models, that would help us further to detect that specific anomaly that is targeting us, and not just picking up some general data sets and logs that could be found out there on the internet and all those sources, and then design models based on those very generic data. Instead, have your own. And I'm going to talk about that further. And AI-driven situational awareness. So let's play this from reactive defense to more proactive intelligence. Let's see more in deep of that. So this would be the second part of my presentation, where I'm going to share what we could do through my work, what I was doing, part of my research. So in the last 5 years, I was very heavily engaged in research projects, and that was part of my purpose, that I was doing my PhD, but then I just continued progressing further and doing this as a regular thing of my side activities apart from university, and it helped me a lot. So it helps me a lot and brought me into this journey that helps me to understand a lot of things and try to overcome with some solutions towards those problems. So I got engaged mostly in IoT, industrial IoT, wireless sensor networks, security research. I utilize so much machine learning, deep learning, and I was focused mostly on detection of those attacks by looking from different perspectives and looking those in different infrastructures. So more I was using data set, mostly engaged in different projects, and most of the recent project that I got engaged in research was with the GCA Global Cyber Alliance, where we got a data set from their honeypot that there were a lot of attacks at targeting IoT organizations, and I was leading a team back then, and we need to come up with some detection techniques that would be able in high levels of accuracy to identify those anomalies among those data. And that data set was very huge and big one, 55 million rows. So, and then we and we utilize different tools and building infrastructure. You're going to see some of these mentioned here, so GNS3, Contiki Koja, open source, very good one, and then virtualization, and using different protocols when it comes to the IoT and industrial IoT. And most of the research focus was on the attack detection, so how we would kind of detect that specific attack, and risk analysis, building those predictive models, and which would have already integrated that predictive intelligence, or this would be the way, and considering industrial environments, and not just building that infrastructure and have the data set that would not be aligned well with industrial environments. And for future, I'm seeing further to have those research focused towards those called agentic AI, specifically for industrial IoT. And I'm seeing that there is a lot of gap and room to work towards that. So when it comes to the architecture, I built all those architecture from scratch, and have those data pipeline that would help me on analyzing more the security and attacks within those industrial IoT environments. So from data acquisition, building that infrastructure, and generate and collect data, towards feature engineering, trying to understand those data, and then further according to data science life cycle, moving towards the feature engineering and machine learning models utilization, different algorithms, different techniques, different methods, and then towards classification, potentially sometimes binary one, normal versus attack, and then trying to prototype those models, and not just leaving as a models. You can prototype those very easily. This might be a good idea for all of you that you want to do business in this time that we are living within this AI machine learning. You can have, if you have very good data set, and train those models on top of those data set, you can very easily bring that into the industry market as a model and algorithms that could be very easily integrated into the IDS and IPS, so intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems, because those two systems would be based on the knowledge, all their knowledge bases based on some rules. And one of those rules can be yours that you have designed and developed and utilize machine learning and AI too. That could be a good idea for doing business and contribute towards a better security when it comes to the OT and IoT and industrial IoT infrastructures. So let's see more on the models and all those research that I was doing. So what was the contribution towards the IoT security? Was some contribution or not? So over many research works, the key takeaway would not be just accuracy. We will be focused, researchers and peoples and professionals in this field will be focused mostly, oh yeah, what's your accuracy? 90%, 99, that's good. That would not be good, probably 99% of the accuracy, but consistency and continuity over different environments, from IoT, industrial IoT, and wireless sensor networks and systems, that would be most important. So one of the contribution here that I want to highlight would be that integrated approach with machine learning, and looking that for the use of cost-benefit analysis. That was one of the research that I was doing for my PhD study and PhD thesis that I already defended. So I came up with a decision support model that would not be just based on the data specifically for IoTs, but would include and would consider the aspect and approach from looking from cost benefit too. Is that feasible from cost benefit, that specific finding, vulnerability gap, lack, misconfiguration, whatever it is, that we want to mitigate and fix that. And based on that, that model would give you the top 3 recommendation based on sensitivity, impact that we used to do, all those pen test tools, manual and automatic one. Whenever you find that, you evaluate the risk, but not cost and benefit. And I built that model that would evaluate the cost benefit too. and that would be bringing some mitigation recommendations looking from economic aspect. That's very useful. And then building more using real IoT attack data sets. So that project with GCA, coming the data from their real honeypot, that was something very useful that I was leading a team there. We came up with very good models that could contribute towards better security, and then further designing more simulated environment data set where would be running infrastructure that runs all over the wireless sensor networks within all over those IoTs, and then picking up some different industrial sectors like smart transportation. So that was the other key contribution. And more to that, so you see that within this table, I have listed some models. So from gradient boosting that would be used for specific cases and attack type, you see that classification and what was focused towards to, and the rest of those. And you see that consistency on detection over those environments is very important and crucial. And you can assess that, you can test that. And I moved that further and prototyping each of those models, I prototype into a product that we're running on the web. And then you can test those with the real data by providing the end users and that specific organization to use that and have some benefit from all this approach of proactive intelligence. So this would mean more proactive intelligence. And on top of that, if you utilize the AI and all over those emerged technology like digital twins, that would help you so much to assess and to see where you're standing on and then what you can do further. And as an ongoing work, I'm actually working on something on the healthcare systems, on sectors. I'm trying to build a machine learning model based on insider threat detection. I'm using the Carnegie Mellon University data set that they have for insider threat. They have very good data set, and I'm working on top of that and trying to design that machine learning model and then potentially prototype some kind of framework and governance approach model for the healthcare organization. The second thing, smart grid. I'm focused on smart grid, so industriality, risk analysis, dashboards, trying to provide some more proactive intelligence way for those smart grid. Further, so OT and industrial IoT attack detection logic, how this, so each attack type required a specific related different various modeling approach that we would not be able to have one generic model that would work for all of those attack types. That would not be the approach that I would talk, promote, teach, and work. So more proactive intelligence for a specific attack type, we want to have that modeling approach that could bring us some benefits that whenever we would be implementing that model in our infrastructure, would be able to catch up those specific attacks. That would be, for example, sinkhole attack. Those would be type of attack that would attract all that traffic around themselves, and that would be a sinkhole that would sink that whole traffic and would disrupt you, and all that communication happening within a wireless sensor networks of your IoTs would be disrupted, because instead of those communicating with their closest point and sending those data or to their main gateway, they're gonna be attracted by that sinkhole, and that's gonna disrupt your communication because you're not being able to accept and receive those data as you used to do prior to that sinkhole attack. So for the sinkhole attacks in wireless sensor networks environments, would be effectively detection using, in this case was, in my case when I was doing research, was decision tree based detection. That was the model algorithm, the machine learning algorithms that I used that was much effective. While on the network based attacks like DOS, denial of service, or distributed denial of service, there was more since those needs more advanced assembled models, like in this case XGB boost, gradient boosting, those were mostly effective when you would be working on the machine learning models and trying to find what would be suitable and aligned for that. And then more on the anomalous traffic behavior, random forest models works very well, and I'm seeing that more often. And MQTT-based intrusion signals, so behavioral machine learning analysis would help on that way. Detection logic would be needed to be more model-driven and environment-specific. So keep in mind those two things, specific for that environment and model-driven, of course, which would be considering that specific attack types and not just building something that in general generic that would not be able to catch anything on that infrastructure, or at least alert us and notify. Real lab simulation work. So this is where the research would become more practical. So you're not just gonna do that research and have that model, that's all, but you're gonna need some environments. So these environments were not just for testing, but for generating real data sets. I end up building an infrastructure from scratch and then generating data sets, simulating attack, injecting some attacks into those infrastructures where you would be able to see the real thing happening, and then having that data set maliciously injected by some attacks and some normal operation and healthy data would be a golden thing that you would be having for further machine learning design, testing, and evaluation, and validating those. And I was further validating those AI-driven detection models. So all simulations were used to generate data sets on top of those infrastructure, further validate machine learning-based attack and detection models. Whenever I was generating the data set, injecting some attacks, and having that data set as complete, and finishing up the machine learning models and techniques and testing and evaluation, and then I would be bringing that back to that infrastructure, that model, to see how that would behave on top of that infrastructure. So this would be the way that would be proactive intelligence that I would suggest, and I talk and I teach those all over the places where I got a chance to talk, in all those conferences and webinars like this. So you will see here a list of a lot of technical things that you can grab that as a screenshot and have that or watch later and try to come up with those infrastructure. This would help you so much on that way. So this shift is where my works comes in. So shifting from reactive to proactive security, this would be the focus, and we're going to focus on that convergence point, joining point, where would be convergence place for OT and IT. That would be the attack surface. So reactive, we know those. We said all the time, traditional security, so logs after attack, signature detection, manual response, those are dead practically. So moving from reactive towards a proactive, that would not be a theoretical part, would be very practical. So we want to achieve that utilization of that machine learning capability models trained on real IoT, industrial IoT, and wireless sensor network data would be very useful for moving further to proactive security. So predict attack before those would hit you and impact you. Behavioral anomaly detection, so you're going to analyze the behavior would speak for itself. And then if you want to move towards automation, that's there. You can use that at some very good degree. You can build that automation on top of that. And this would be all on machine learning based detection all over those IoT and industrial IoT and wireless sensor networks. So this would be that shift that from a research that would be very scientific one. And someone might think that that would not be beneficial. How we would contribute that? You just saw the way. I just show you what I'm doing, and that could bring to that very practical way and approach that you can apply that, and that would shift you towards more proactive security and not just sitting and waiting there, what's going to happen to me. Role of AI in OT security. So AI, artificial intelligence in OT is not, it's not just about the detection, but would be more on understanding that behavior. So in my work, as I said, I use machine learning models to baseline device behavior. So whenever you know that people from this field in the security community worldwide, they know that whenever you have a baseline, that's very useful, it's very beneficial, whatever you have. But maintaining that well will be crucially important moving towards proactive. But whenever you have, that would help you so much to find that deviation or that spike that has happening afterwards in comparison to that recent, latest, whatever it was, whenever that you've done, you have that maintained that baseline would help you to find those, detect those deviations all over your infrastructure, even if that's for the IoT and especially for IoT industrial IoT and wireless sensor network systems. So that would be helping you so much. Real-time anomaly detection, predictive maintenance, behavior baselining, maintaining the baseline would be very important. Edge AI deployment in industrial gateways, you can do that in real infrastructure in industry. You would have all over the places distributed those sensors, and sometimes those would be very far from facility where we operate, where we have our main workplace, and those would be out on the field there, and those would be served through the edge point where they would be able to collect those data and bringing back to the central server. And then machine learning driven detection over the MQTT one, I'm just mentioning one, but different protocols and wireless sensor networks environments. As a proposal, I'm just coming up to the end of this talk towards that. So as a proposed AI-driven OT security framework would be this way. So we're gonna have some framework layers. So this would be the core of my approach that I'm actually working and progressing towards better and very good things when it comes to the proactive intelligence. So AI-driven framework, a layered framework would be where the detection would start at the edge. That's the desired state. That's all the simulation, testing, research that I'm doing. I'm trying to reach and achieve that. At some point, I have already reached, and then learning happens in the cloud, and then response would be handled at the infrastructure at the SOC level, security operation level. So this would be the way that I would describe this proposal towards AI-driven layered framework when it comes to the detection. So all the time, all those organizations out there, companies, they wanted to first detect. Whenever they detect, they know what's happening, and then afterwards you mitigate and handle that incident proper to your proper to your frameworks, procedures, and that would be much easier for you. And each of those layers, you have that specific steps and activities that could happen. So from the edge, from a sensor layers, you're going to collect and grab all those data from device and networks too. And then as layer, you're going to on the cloud, that will be the learnings, what would happen. So you're going to utilize that models that you already have for detection, and that you're going to do in real time. And then you're going to have that coming with the real insights and for that detection where the SOC layer would take on further and see if that was triggered as a detection or if that was any decision making that they needed to do on top of those data, or alert someone or trigger some automated response when it comes to that specific detection. Future, so what would be the future direction? So what we are moving towards is not just better detection, but more intelligent systems that could learn, adapt, and respond automatically. I'm saying automatically, but within an oversight and supervision of the human factor. Without that, those things would not be just coming up together on their own. So this is where AI, artificial intelligence, could transform the OT security, as I said, shifting from reactive protection to more autonomous defense, where with an oversight of a human would be the desired state where all organizations wanted to have. So distributed intelligence, federated learning, real-time protection, as I said, as I explained that layered framework, AGI, simulation and prediction. Digital twins would help you very much to simulate that real physical infrastructure into the digital world and to see how that could react. Autonomous defense, we're going to see headed towards more self-healing system. Let's see if that would be achieved and reached. So the future of OT security would be in more autonomous intelligence and adaptive defense systems according to that to the needs and then aligned with that specific environment. What if? We always have those hypothetical questions that we want to solve. So what if the future of OT security? These would not be hypothetical ideas anymore, but these would be capabilities that we are able to use actively moving towards with AI-driven cybersecurity. So what if AI detects a sinkhole attacks in wireless sensor networks before routing collapses? What if OT systems automatically isolate compromised nodes? What if SOC analysts see predictions instead of alerts? So you see where this switch would be headed towards. So SOC analysts, SOC teams are those most important teams and individuals in our organization, that those would be the first line of defense, whatever would be happening towards our infrastructure, impacting from different risks, threats, and attacks. Those would be the people that would need to respond. So instead of them seeing thousands of alerts coming in, and they're gonna need to scroll one by one and fix and mitigate each one of those and try to see and correlate with the other threat intelligence, instead of they having those already prediction, and then based on prediction they're gonna make a better decision based on that prediction to what they're gonna do further. So this would be that switch that AI would not replace human, but would be very helpful, and it is a tool to us. In security, as a cybersecurity professional in the last 12, 13 years, I say that AI is a very good and useful tool for us that you can use around as the other tools that we use, where we can distribute in all of our infrastructure, all those agents, bring all those data into one place, and then utilize machine learning techniques and methods and algorithms, and have those prediction models that could bring us to much closer and smarter and intelligent ways of making decisions for each one of those detection for a specific attack type, and aligned well with, relate to that environment, and not just having generic and general data that could be used for prediction. Key takeaways. So the last slide, we are moving toward from a world where we react to cyber attacks to one where we would be able to anticipate them. So, and AI would be that key enabler for this transformation, and would help us so much in cybersecurity community. AI is just another tool that we're able to use, and use that, why not? So operation technology has already increased, targets were increased towards those with much more advanced cyber attacks, and we are seeing that we're feeling. We just talked about that in the beginning of this webinar. Traditional security approaches are no longer enough. Those would not be needed, not sufficient. And AI would enable more proactive, lightweight machine learning models, would help us to integrate those within the IDS and IPS systems as knowledge-based rules that would help us to detect that specific type of attack that is targeting us, since we use data, real data of our traffic, that we already experienced something like that. And the future of OT security would be those autonomous and AI driven. So that was all from me, and thank you very much. Yes, and you mentioned very important things. So without disrupting operation, that's very important. So again, depends on the infrastructure and the devices and the networks that you already have running and operating. But what you can do very easily, you would not touching those points in infrastructure that would be very sensitive and important for you to run the smooth operation, and that could, whenever you want to change and adjust and have some kind of communication onto those, that might disrupt your normal operation. But let's try to see different approaches. Let's try to focus more on the places where you would be collecting some data. So look where on your infrastructure you're collecting some data, because that would be most important. Moving towards a proactive intelligence way, as I said, having the data first. Whenever you got the data, you move further than with the rest of a machine learning approach that you would try to have those predictive models that would be very effective for accuracy. That would be one solution. The second solution would be utilizing those AI agentic. So in the OT, those AI integration would be one way where on top of those models, you would utilize the AI to just expand that knowledge and that effectiveness of that model. And the other one would be the same way. You would be distributing AI agents all over infrastructure. For what purpose? With the main purpose to collect your insight and information and traffic for what is happening within that network. You can do that. You can put those in a position, and you can have install additional device server endpoint in somewhere in the infrastructure, or those you can run as script based that would help you to bring all those data within one place. And whenever you have all those data within one place, then you can decide what you're going to do with those data. Moving further and designing and testing and evaluating and machine learning models that would help you further to see what will be the prediction on top of those data, or if you wanted to move. If not, you would have those data in one place where those would be very useful. Yes, of course, from governance towards operational and architecture and the whole that. So first of all, the people that would be in charge for decision making, they're going to need to shift and adjust that approach and see AI, machine learning as a useful, very beneficial tools for their organization. So that will be coming from governance. They're going to need to have a meeting and have a decision that we're going to have, this will be our approach, and we're going to try to utilize and let the people on the organization know that we are including this for a part of our cybersecurity program or security policy or whatever the way that they would be operating, and that would be coming from the top. So those things would adjust and shift operational activities towards something new and needs a decision making. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing that would be on operational level, you would just adjust your processes, your human resources towards utilization, towards that proactive intelligence way. So you're going to have data analytics people that would be equipped with that knowledge and would have some skills around that knowledge that they need to know. They know how to do that, how to do data analytics from those data sets, and then utilize machine learning and AI. So you're going to need to have people too for those specific. And sometimes you will be able to find security people very well equipped with machine learning skills, and potentially someone might be able to do data analytics too. So as I was the first certified as a ethical hacker. I was doing all the time pen test, moved towards the research, and then moved towards the governance and so on. So that would be operational and technical level, as that triangle defines three levels: governance, operational, technical. On technical is just applying whatever you come up with an approach that you want to apply and have those and you already designed and defined those processes. You're going to just apply that into your infrastructure, and that would be the safest way without a disruption of any operation within that infrastructure, and maintaining resiliency, accountability, and operational continuity. you're going to need more than AI and machine learning and those cybersecurity. You're going to need for business continuity, ISO standards, business continuity, DRP, disaster recovery, backup strategies, and a lot of things that you're going to invest within that security program. So this whole security would not be free. That would cost you some money, and you're going to need to have some decision, first of all, to shift that governance towards security program or cybersecurity program that will utilize AI, machine learning. We're going to do some data analytics. We're going to collect those data. We're going to build predictive models, and we're going to base our decision making based on that predictive models. Yes, very good point. So maintaining trust, accountability, and control over critical operations. The most crucial part into those things, whatever I was talking, is the data. Sometimes there is a risk all the time that data would be altered and changed maliciously. That could happen. That could happen from someone from insider, so insider threat, someone that is acting sometimes ethical, sometimes unethical. That could happen from outside, from injection, target, maliciously scripts that would inject, change and alter data, or inject attacks that would be faking your predictive models and those AI systems. So that would be most important for you to maintain the healthy state of your data set that you already use or you continue using to enhancing those AI systems based on those data. And in the core of this whole AI systems and AI thing is the data. So if you have very good data and health data, that would be your effectiveness of your AI systems built on top of those models that would act and react and have a proactive and make a lot of predictions, and then you take a decision based on those predictions, on those data that those AI systems will make. So most important would be for you maintaining a healthy data set. So that would be the most important part that I can find out and think about that. That would be important for maintaining that trust, accountability, and control over critical operations, as we already do in a traditional security and way. So we have CIA triad, confidential integrity and availability, that we wrapped up that around the data. So in the core is the data. We want to protect confidentiality, maintain integrity, and provide availability, but we want to have that trust and accountability and control over those data. So we don't want anyone to unauthorized access, inject something that would not be originally sourced from that data, and then maintain that availability. So that would be most important. All over those years that I was doing those research and things and set up in those infrastructure, I was trying to do that on my own. I reached at some degree to have that disruptions, DOS, DDoS, injecting malicious data within the data set. I was able to do that, fake data. And most of the time those attacks might target you at this point, as you mentioned, so attempting to prevent monitoring and security. So they might be, if they got unauthorized access, they got put in the door into your infrastructure, they might try to disable services that would be in charge for monitoring that security, or that specific agent that you distributed to that endpoint, to that server or that infrastructure. That might be, but depend on the attack that would be targeting you. The other thing that would depend would be on the platform of monitoring that you're using. If that has some services that have already distributed, or those affected, and if you have a central server and then distributed all the agents, that might not be affecting your central server, but you're gonna end up getting some insights and traffic and information, monitoring information from that specific endpoint. So depend on a lot of things, but I haven't seen any real attack that would try to monitor, to prevent those monitoring and security of that specific. But if you got a data and you got the baseline and you're trying to learn and understand those data, and at some points there would be some suspicious traffic and moments within that whole timeline that you're going to investigate that you're going to try to come up with a model that will be suitable for that specific attack that is trying to prevent that monitoring and security, then you would be able to detect that whenever that's happening in the future. Remember, keep in mind, so for us, security community, and you that you're looking forward to come into this field, AI and machine learning is just a tool that we are able to utilize. Use all the resources that are available, especially from EC Council. I still getting a lot of education towards my highest levels of the governance and management of security, cybersecurity program from EC Council. Do that and further practice hands-on. Those will be the golden things that would equip you with some skills, help you to build some skills around that knowledge. So use that. That would be my message. Thank you all.